Today's video is going to be a good one. We're going to talk about 10 crises that no one is talking about that's influencing us more than we really know. So let's jump right into it. I hope you enjoy this video. If you're new to the Max, please go down here, press subscribe, ring the bell, because we need your thumbs up, we need your comments, and it tells YouTube that, hey, this information may be worth watching. So that video starts right now. 10 crises that no one else may be talking about that is influencing us how we're living right now. We've noticed how crazy it's been the last few years on just trying to get a supply and demand, inflation, hyperinflation, also how we're talking about recession and depression fears, the interest rates going up. It's amazing what has happened the last 2 years that could be influencing or impacting those, or could possibly get worse based on these 10 things. Now, some of these you may have heard of, some of these you may have not, but we're going to jump right into them and talk about them, because this is what's going to decide how we live really the rest of our life and also survive in this crazy world we live in. So, number one, because we are so dependent on someone else growing our own food. Now, here at our farm, we're growing as much food as possible, all our meats, mostly every one of our vegetables. We can't grow macaroni and cheese yet, but we're really trying. But our goal is to always teach people you need to grow food. However, because we're not growing food as a society like they were maybe even in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, going through the Depression, going through World War II, you had a lot of people that were growing a lot of their own food. That is not happening now. So let's talk about who raises our food. Farmers. Farmers' age is one of the main crises that no one's talking about. No one's getting into the farmers movement, it's not high in demand. Now let's talk about that. Now, us as regenerative farmers, you're seeing a lot of people start raising their own food. Absolutely, farm to table is phenomenal, and they're feeding a lot of their community. But on a grand scale, when we talk about farms that are thousands of acres growing conventional crops, cash crops, and being these farmers who's providing the world, it's not happening. And those farms are now getting aged to where these farmers are in their mid to late 50s. That's the average age of the farmer in America, is mid to late 50s. Do we actually think when this generation of farmers retire because they have served this country well by feeding us, feeding our animals, all those things, who's going to take up that desire to grow food for everybody in mass and work 7 days a week? Who's going to want to do that? So now that's the scary thing, because of the crisis, you're starting to see a movement towards a lot more GMO food, a lot more lab-grown food, and people are pushing, and government is pushing away from people like us that are trying to grow regeneratively. First crisis, the age of the farmer, can be scary, because what's going to happen in the next few years when those farmers have now retired? On those same lines, now we talk from the age of farmers, government is backing farmers to not grow. We're pushing this green agenda across our America to where we're growing cover crop instead of crop that we can eat. Now that's all good. I believe in cover crop. I believe in regenerative ag. So I believe that the earth can heal itself through farming. I believe, you know, this grass is gorgeous, and most of my areas, in this area, we've had a lot of dry weather, but our cows still have a lot of grass because of the regenerative practices. Same way with our gardens, doing no-till and cover crops. We use those things, but we're starting to see subsidizing not growing. We're starting to see we don't want farmers, you know, using tractors. We don't want farmers using industrial style equipment. We don't want farmers growing anything. We want them to do a greener expansion. We want them to grow fields of cover crop. That's all good and all, but in a food shortage, that's probably the last thing we need. So crisis 2 is our government actually helping the farmers in the best way to grow the crops and the industrial cash crops that we're needing for. Here we are, we're using corn in our gas. We're having wheat shortages all over the world because of the wars, and farmers are not able to farm because the government is actually paying them not to farm. It's crisis number 2. Government working against us and working against the big farms and paying them to not grow something versus growing something. Doesn't make sense, y'all. Thirdly, dealing with the big farm is fertilizer. Now, we do not use any synthetic fertilizers on farm. Our goal is to use our animals, but we're growing for us and our community and to make sure we're self-sufficient here on farm. But again, for the masses, if we're not doing a Joel Salatin regenerative ag, and we're starting to grow these big GMO crops to feed the world, because that's what everybody tells us we should do, it takes natural gas to make fertilizer. Fertilizer's already short in demand because of the natural gas. The price of natural gas is going up because of the wars. So all these facets are playing into the third crisis of there is no fertilizer, and the fertilizer that is available, it's very expensive, and the farmers can't afford to plant what they were planting. So these three things are all hitting towards the food shortage. You would think that the government would help, and you would think that there would be other ways and means to look at fixing some of these crises. And it is going back to the local farms like we're doing. However, I don't see a lot of people doing that, especially people who can't because they don't own a farm. So again, I would challenge you, with these crises showing, you need to have a solution of growing local, having farms that are close that can provide certain things, and you work with the farmer, you build a relationship for your meat and for your vegetables. If you can't grow them, if you can grow them, you need to start growing your backyards full of vegetables. Number 4, to me, blows my mind. Because we live in the South, we live in the Southeast, especially with a lot of rains and waters. I'm literally have a creek, I have a lake, and we have a well. And so when I hear people say water rights, and that people are buying up water rights, and that there's no water, there's a famine or drought to a point where there's no water for crops or for people, that's a crisis. That just blows my mind. So, if you live in the West and you're dealing with that, Northwest, Southwest, I can't imagine what you're going through. I couldn't live there. I wouldn't live there. I would move. I would migrate. I'm not joking. I think that's crazy. But to me, when I pay taxes, and instead of sending it all over the world or doing this random junk we do with our tax dollars, instead of charging me for property taxes that are out of this world, I would love to pay taxes to make sure that people have water. That blows my mind that we're in a situation where people are buying up water rights, or people can't afford water rights, or they can't have water. When has that ever been a job for the government to take our water, or to say we can only have this amount? So we need to figure that out. That's a crisis that I think that, I'm telling you, I wouldn't deal with. I couldn't live there. I'm sorry for all the people that do, and I hope the best for you. But if I could spend my tax dollars for you to have water, I would definitely do that. I think that the government needs to step on that. I mean, if the government is good for anything, it needs to be to make sure that we are having access to water and food. That's crazy. So water rights, having the crisis with the water rights and issues of unless you've got piles of money, you can't buy enough water rights, or you can only have this amount of water. That's crazy. You'll never be able to survive or grow food or have a life without water. And that also brings me to point 5. Because of our tax structure, a lot of times people can't hold thousands and thousands of acres of land because of estates and wills and some of the tax that you get with that. I understand that, and that's not what this video is about. But because a lot of those places are selling their land, we see corporations and billionaire corporations and billionaires buying up this land, this farmland, and also our water rights. So the more that any individual or any business or any corporation buys up of something, they're monopolizing what they're buying. That's the whole point of business. There's nothing wrong with capitalist. There's something wrong with a fascist style capitalist, where we allow them to buy up all this land, and all of a sudden now we have billionaires who has never farmed at all buy up land, and they're not helping the world by putting more crops there. It's like they're holding it knowing that you're going to be in need of it. So it's a crisis, because a lot of people are not growing enough food anymore, and then we're allowing it to be sold to people who are not going to grow food. If it's sold, it needs to be sold as farmland. If it's sold, it needs to be sold as a crop or whatever it is. I think that that's very, very important. So the crisis there is, not only are we having water right issues, we're having land issues to make sure there's enough food to grow, make sure there's enough land to grow it. We don't have a lot of people putting their own politics in something, and then all of a sudden saying, well, we're not going to allow anything to happen here. I'm fine, but other people have to just fend for themselves, or they'll have to buy this product. That's kind of scary. So crisis number 5 is billionaires are buying up land, and that sometimes may not be a good thing. We're at the pig forest. Look at these little pigs. Now we just see those green beans. I got all my peas and greens picked from the last video that we talked about, and we were able to shell them. So now they get the pods. Again, making sure we're not wasting anything. Look at all those little piglets. We have 16 little piglets. Number 6 is China. China is going through another lockdown. No matter how you feel about China, you are buying everything you're buying, unless you see proud American made, is bought in China and is shipped over here. They're one of the biggest exporters in our world. So when they shut down because of a pandemic, or they shut down because of a government situation that they're going through, guess what that does? That destroys the supply chain. Our supply chain, because it's global, which I believe that we need to become more made in America and America first, but because we are allowing the global food chain and the supply chain to be orchestrated by such big players, when China shuts down, that means exports shut down. That means the movement of goods and services shut down. That's a problem, because ultimately, if we're trying to get food or goods, if we're trying to run our cars, we depend on so much of China goods. And when they shut it down, they automatically say, you know what, too bad. We've got the goods, and we will send it over there when we can, but right now might not happen. So number 6 is the supply chain is broken because it's global, and we're allowing China to send so many goods over here. Not that I'm against nations, you know, sharing goods and selling goods and trading goods, because that allows our world hopefully to stay peaceful and not in war. However, we need to have some alternate plans to make sure that our supply chain does not get broken down, because ultimately every one of us have to work. Every one of us have to have parts for our cars or for our tractors. Every one of us has to eat. Every one of us has to have goods. You know, imagine if you're not, which this shirt I did buy America because that's what we wanted. However, I'm gonna show you this hat. This hat is one of my favorite hats. These are made overseas. You can't get them right now. I love this hat, but it is what it is. The supply chain is broken. Now, is this hat a major problem? Nah. But there are a lot of things coming over that is part of our supply chain that we can't get because China is shutting down again, and they're not opening up yet. And so it's gonna make a ripple effect heading this way. Next is something that you've seen a little bit on the news, especially not on mainstream, but maybe in some of the secondary news sites, that you've seen a lot of food distributors burning, either burning to the ground. Last week there was about over 1,000 cattle, or 2,000 cattle I think, died in Kansas. On the news side, they always say, well, it's not a conspiracy. I'm not saying it is. I mean, that's for you to find out. All this information we give you, we want you to do the research, because I've done my research, and you need to prove to yourself that these things are happening. But if we see all these animals dying, we see all these meat distributors having fires, we see all these food distributors having fires, that will affect the food system, no matter if it's done intentional, no matter if it's done for insurance, no matter if it's done completely accident, no matter if the weather caused it. It still hurts the food system and the supply chain. So that's a crisis we need to figure out. If you look though, and you grow your own food, or as much as you can, or you buy it from your local neighbor. Some of you are living in the city, and we understand, but there's going to be farmers markets that come into your city, especially bigger cities. Find out where your food markets are and your locally grown markets are. Get in touch with them and build a relationship. You be the one to go out there to their farm. Don't make them come to you. You go to them. You try to barter work. You go on there and say, I'd love to work for you for this amount of food. I'd love to work for you for this amount of money so we can split it. There's ways that you can help that farmer, even if you're not living on a farm. There's places you can go and help and be a bartering tool yourself. Be a laborer to be able to provide for your family. But that's another thing. It's a crisis to see these places burning to the ground. It's a lot of food. 2,000 cattle, that's a lot of beef. A lot of beef. Another crisis. This one may ruffle your feathers, but it's true. Our medicine dependency, time and time again. Drug overdose, even on things that are not street drugs, on true drugs and prescriptions filled. We need to be careful and wary of that. The reason is, if we come into a crisis and you are taking loads of pills a day, and they're for health, or they're for some part of your body, some things I know we cannot help. We may have to take to even live. I understand that. I'm not talking about those. But there's some things, some pills, some narcotics that we don't need. And when we take them and we abuse them as a society, what's going to happen when there's a food or medicine crisis? And it's a shortage to where you may not could get those same things. If your body is programmed to have those, then that's a crisis. And people will fight even more for the medicines because of the state of mind that they may be in versus food. So I would challenge you, look at the medicines you're taking. Look at the medicines that your doctors are prescribing. Is it a necessity? Do your research. Find ways and means that you could just have a healthier life. Providing natural medicinal foraging herbs. Providing herbs grown in your gardens. Misty, my wife, has got great videos, and I will link those in the description right below. I'll pin them in the comments. 2 videos talking about foraging and herbs and medicinal benefits to it. Put that in your diet, because that is going to help you not have the medicine dependency that is now becoming a crisis in our nation. Scary times, man. Number 9 is money destruction. What is the new money going to be? We see the petrodollar, which is our currency, that is there to pay for fuel. That is the currency that people buy fuel with all over the world. Now, it's not that important anymore, because guess what? Saudi Arabia and OPEC and some of those countries are buying it with the yen and the ruble. They're buying it with other currencies. That hurts our dollar. Inflation hurts our dollar. We're raising rates like crazy. The Fed is raising rates, trying to balance out our dollar and inflation. What's amazing, just think about it. What's amazing is there's a war going across the world, and we're supposed to put sanctions against that war. We send $54 billion over to this war, and we're the ones suffering. The Russian ruble is actually worth more than the dollar right now. Their currency value is better than ours. Now, if you don't believe me, do the research. And why are we the ones that's having the crisis of food issues? Should we go back to where we're doing a lot of our stuff here and innovating here in America? It's a crisis we need to think about. It's important. Watch where your dollar is. I would challenge you. I'm not going to give you financial advice. I'm just telling you what I'm doing. I'm keeping maybe a lot more not in the banks as I used to. I can't eat a dollar, and I can't eat gold or silver, and I can't eat Bitcoin, but I can eat food. So I challenge you to bulk food buy, bulk water buy. Make sure you have everything you need, because when it comes down to it, control is all about what takes care of your family. If you can provide the things that you're needing to take care of your family, you may not be so susceptible to what everyone's telling you. Lastly, again, maybe another one that kind of gets you ruffled, is the news. I challenge you to have hope. And the news, you're not going to find it. In the news, you're not going to find it, sometimes even on YouTube. But I want you to have hope. I want you to understand the value of all the crises going on. There's a solution. And the solution is all found in what we are as America. And also, as a Christian, I believe it's also found in Christ. We need to understand the crisis that sometimes we go through helps us be innovative and better. What helped us get out of the Great Depression last time was innovation, American ingenuity, being an entrepreneur, maybe growing and being a farmer, maybe changing your past, changing where you live. To build those freedoms and to have those innovations, it's found in us. It's found in us as America. We can defeat the crisis, but it's going to be a hard road to go down. As a Christian, again, I believe that Christ is there. I believe that if we just, as a nation, turn to Him, we would actually probably have a better situation than what we're doing. We're lived in a crazy crisis-filled world right now, especially in America. But the only way to kind of fix that is within. We got to quit watching the news. We got to quit, listening to everybody. Do your research. All these things that I said in this video, you can do your own research. You don't have to listen to me by any means. But just think about what's going on. Common sense-wise, what is better? If we're saying we're not going to drill for fuel here because we want clean energy, nuclear energy is clean and we're not wanting it. Solar, wind, and water are all great, but they're not got enough innovation. Us buying fuel from Iran, Russia, or Venezuela, they're still pumping the same fuel. Their crude is not as clean as ours, and also they're still hurting the same green America, or the same green earth that we would be hurting. So if we can do it cheaper, if we can do it more healthier and better for our environment, and then also still build innovation to find other ways to have energy, why don't we do both? So think past what the media is telling you. Just think past them and understand that you can think for yourself. Have some common sense, take care of your family, and be God-fearing. Follow Christ for sure, because it will help you, help your family, and you'll have hope. All these crises, they're gonna get us, but if we have hope, it's gonna defeat those crises. Guys, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you've been enjoying these survival tips that we've been pushing out. Let us know below what you think. If some of these crises affect you or not affect you, I would challenge you, the water and food are just huge for me. So I want you to understand, I want you to move and find a new place to grow food and have water. But think for yourself, be innovative, God-fearing, and loving on your family. God bless. Happy homesteading, y'all.